And she's got to unmute. Okay, now try.
Councilmember Shipman, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and commence this meeting. This is March 26th, 2024 at 6 p.m. and we are down at the mill in beautiful downtown Lake Stevens. In person as well as on Zoom. This meeting will later be published on our YouTube channel. It's going to be a city council meeting. And with that, I would call the meeting to order and ask everyone to rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, great. Clerk Schellen, may we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Daughtry.
Present.
Councilmember Peters Hagan.
Present.
Councilmember Donahue.
Present.
Councilmember Shipman online.
Present.
Councilmember Jorstad. Present. Councilmember Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Tagent.
Present. All right, great. And Council President, can we get an agenda, please?
Yes, good evening to everyone. We did have an updated council agenda. Hopefully everybody got that. Item 11A was changed to a closed public hearing. Closed record public hearing, excuse me. So if everyone's aware of that. Any other changes or admissions, deletions? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You have an agenda.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And we're going to kick this off with a little guest business from Lake Stevens Community Food Bank. Anthony and Sophina.
I'm Sophina. I'm the president of the Lake Stevens Community Food Bank. Most of you know me because I've been here asking for money and help and assistance and things. And I'm here just to tell everybody thank you and kind of give a little report on all the work that we've accomplished in less than a year at the food bank building. I did bring Anthony with me, so he's going to have some statistics and we'll be able to answer any questions you guys might have. But once we did the ribbon cutting, we really just hit the ground running. I mean, we really started serving with the week after from the building. People that came in were so happy. The community was so excited that this building was there for them to come and shop. The concept is beautiful. The people are so excited. It's become a home to some people. I have a brief story. A couple weeks ago, we had a gentleman come in who's been coming for years. His wife has been very, very ill. And she passed away a couple weeks ago. And he came for his appointment, or actually he came early. His appointment was 4:30. He came at like 2. And he said, I don't know where else to go. So I'm here at the food bank. So Georgia let him shop. And he said, can I come back on my appointment time? And she said, well, you're welcome to come back, but you can't shop. But so he did, and they were there for him. And our staff that is at the building on a daily basis has become that comfort for the community. So I wanted you all to know that this is what we've provided for people in Lake Stevens and people from, Snohomish County. We have a lot of people who are serving from Everett, from North Snohomish, South Marysville, like we expected, a lot more than we expected, but we're happy to serve. And Anthony will tell you a little bit about some of the organizations that we're collaborating with. I wanted to shout out to Barb Stevenson and Russ for working with me on the documents, paperwork, and for all of the council members, past and present, who unanimously voted for the funding for your support. So thank you. And here's Anthony.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony. I'm the stat guy. I'm the executive director of the Lake Stevens Community Food Bank. As Sophina had mentioned, our programs have skyrocketed. We've furthered them because of the building, because of the support that the city, our community members, and local businesses have provided for us to be able to build this new facility. So just in the past 6 months since we've been in there, we've been averaging 725 families every single week. In 2023 alone, as we all know, more people are in need than ever. In 2023, we served 56% more people than we did in 2022, and 95% more people than we did in 2021. A big part of that is our new facility, the location, being a little bit more visible, but we truly see the need when people are coming in there. We get to see the impact that we're making. With the new facility, it is a shopping model. People get a grocery cart when they come in. They get to choose the food that fits their family's needs, their cultural needs. And with that, we've been able to expand the programs of buying more culturally relevant food for those people. We had a lot of people that would not eat different types of meat. And now we're able to provide those because we get that one-on-one connection with those people when they're coming in to shop with us. Along with that, we're now housing the Lake Stevens Community Resource Center. And so we get to be that one-stop shop. We get to be that wraparound services that our community members need. And so when people come in, a lot of them don't just need food. A lot of them need help with other aspects of their lives. And so we get to refer them up to the resource center, get them the services they need. Along with that, as we know, Lake Stevens lacks some meeting spaces that are free of charge. We've been able to provide that with our meeting room upstairs. So we have American Legion meeting there every month. Local Rotary Club, their board meetings are there every month. Snohomish County Food Bank Coalition now has a dedicated meeting space instead of hopping around from place to place when we're able to. And then also Bridge Receiving Center, we have provided the space for them to meet and train their staff, do their staff meetings and everything like that. With that, the space has also become an educational place. If you guys follow us on Facebook, you see that we have lots of preschools, Zion Lutheran School. They bring people over. We get to give them tours. We get to explain and educate about the services that we provide and the things that we do for the community. And it gives them a place where 4- and 5-year-olds can come and help do some things at the food bank. And it's been a wonderful opportunity. It's been something that the kids love to get to do. And we're so blessed to be able to do those things. With that, a few more stats. So we've provided over 1 million pounds of food. We do deliveries to elderly, homebound, or disabled people, and we've done over 6,000 deliveries in the past year. We provide diapers, we provide food, obviously, hygiene products, feminine hygiene products, mattresses, thanks to our local Costco, because they continue giving them to us and we keep giving them out. But we've been able to provide so many more things because we have this dedicated facility where we can actually store all of that stuff. With that, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart and the food banks. We're so appreciative and grateful for the support that our city council provides to us and the support that you guys provided to us. It wouldn't have made, or our building wouldn't have been possible without that. So thank you guys.
Hey, well, I'd like to thank both of you too. It is a lot of work to keep the food bank running, and you two are excellent for the job. It's thanked, but not thanked enough, I think. And so the efforts that you guys put in, your board that puts in, Sofina, because I know there's a lot of other faces behind you that support you. They do great work as well. And it's a great asset. I live pretty close to it, so I see it almost every day. And I can always see there's activity going on there. And it's great to see that those who are in need and those who need some help have that opportunity here at Lake Stevens. Good to see. So thank you for being here.
Is there any questions?
Actually, I do have a question. So being a good Costco consumer, I read the book, The Joy of Costco. And in that, it talks about their partnership with local food banks to donate items there. So I'm wondering what connection we have with the Lake Stevens Costco and our food bank to make sure that their donations are distributed locally.
Yeah, great question. So Costco is contracted with Food Lifeline, kind of a more statewide food bank. And so when Costco did open, we did have to submit an application for it. We do get 3 days a week that we pick up at Costco. So Mondays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays we pick up. Granite Falls Food Bank gets another 2 days, and Arlington Food Bank actually gets another day as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Arlington.
Yeah,
From our Costco?
yes. They don't actually get their Costco. I
Okay,
think they
that's
get
good.
1 day a week there.
Okay.
Any others?
So a little bird told me that we also are getting something from Amazon.
Yeah, so that's actually something. So again, housing the Snohomish County Food Bank Coalition. So there's 19 food banks. I'm also on the board for that nonprofit. Arlington Food Bank picks up from the Arlington Amazon warehouse. And so they do share it with us. We have a really good relationship with all the other food banks. And so we do kind of barter food, trade food, help each other out when we're able to.
So as far as the volunteers that you have to help process and staff your, because I know you have a very limited budget.
Yeah.
How are you doing with the number of volunteers and the types of volunteers that you're getting to help you manage your operations?
Yeah, great question. So it always varies. Volunteers are difficult in the aspect that they aren't required to show up the way that we are to our actual jobs. Our volunteers are so amazing and we're so appreciative of the work they do. We can always use more for different types of tasks, but overall our volunteer base is very amazing. And other than one or two not showing up here or there, we're well stocked on volunteers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How many volunteers do you have?
So we do keep track of that monthly. If I remember right, last month we had 129 volunteers. And it was about 1,200 hours of volunteer time.
Wow.
And that's pretty common, right around that number.
Okay, great. Thank you.
June we'll get more when the high schoolers procrastinate and start calling us for their community service hours.
And in May.
Are there any numbers compared to what it used to be when the food bank was located at the Lutheran Church versus to what it is now? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
what
so
the difference-
it's again, it's really difficult to say what the correlation is between when we were at Ebenezer
Mhm.
versus now. Part of that is that the US Farm Bill expired right around June. And so SNAP benefits got drastically reduced from the minimum amount during COVID was about $200. It got reduced to the minimum amount now is $23. So we saw a huge increase just due to that. So I can't really give you like an accurate correlation of this many more are coming because we're in this new building. I can tell you that our numbers have steadily climbed probably about 30% just from in May, which was our last full month in Ebenezer versus now.
Great.
Yeah. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also do want to shout out to our board because our board has worked really, really hard. So thank you for that, Brett, because we've had an amazing board for the past few. I mean, really since the inception of the food bank, and everybody's hearts have just been, hardworking and continue to grow. So definitely shout out to our board. So thanks for that.
Okay, great. Anything else for the food bank? Great. Thanks for being here. Make sure you come often. Just don't always ask for money. I know. And who's the younger version of Anthony?
I shaved my beard.
Yeah.
About 10 years.
We didn't know who he was at Rotary. Friday. Okay, great. What do we got next? Haskell presentation, David.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Mayor Gailey. David Levitan, Senior Planner. So I'm here to introduce a couple of members from Haskell, or the Housing Authority of Snohomish County. We have Dwayne Leonard, their Executive Director, and then Chris Collier, who is the Program Manager for the Alliance for Housing Affordability, which is basically a cross-county team from different cities that works with the Housing Authority to identify housing needs regionally within the county. So just to provide a little bit of context, and then let Chris go ahead and take it away with his presentation. As you'll remember, last June of 2023, the council adopted the city's housing action plan. That document will be largely incorporated into the comprehensive plan, into new goals and policies. In that document, it basically identified some of the changes in the Growth Management Act that have occurred over the last couple of years. The major one was from House Bill 1220, which requires the city to be more prescriptive in its assessment of housing needs at different income bands and different housing types. Basically what that document showed is, and what some of the subsequent analysis has showed, is that the city overall has adequate capacity for its housing needs over the next 20 years, but it does have a documented need for additional housing at these lower income bands. We've identified about 1,168 units that the city needs to provide over the next 20 years for households at 0 to 30% of area median income. And so that's going to be the focus on Hasco's presentation tonight. Some of the strategies that the city can undertake, that it can identify through its comprehensive plan, and some of the partnerships that it can take advantage of, including with Hasco. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris, and he has a quick presentation.
Yes, I do. All right. Thank you so much for the introduction, David. I'm sorry, everybody, that I couldn't be there tonight. My kids brought home the stomach flu and I'm still recovering, and I don't think you want me anywhere near your building. Can you all see the screen well enough? Okay. So I will go over very briefly just kind of the why, or the background of where those 1,100 or so housing units came from that David mentioned, then turn it over to Dwayne to discuss more about how these units do or don't happen. So in brief, there we go. Who and what? The who and the what is the basis for all this is the Seattle Bellevue Metro median family income. That's $146,500 for a household of 4. That's where all of this, 0 to 30%, 50%, 80%. It's all based off of this 4 starting figure of $146,500. That's the median family income for the metro region in 2023. With 4 people. Extremely low income is 1/2 of very low income. And I mention this because it's not a very simple arithmetic. It's fairly simple, but generally speaking, extremely low, you arrive by just dividing very low income in half. Very low income is $68,500 a year, again, for a household of 4 people. You'll notice that that's not a total one-to-one match with 146.5 because of some of HUD's calculations in the background that I won't bore you with. But adjusting for person or by people, add 0.8% for an extra person or subtract 1% for each person subtracted. So with a county average household size of 3, an extremely low income household is, with 3 people, $37,000 a year. So that's what extremely low income means for a Snohomish County household with 3 people, is $37,000 a year. So that's part of it. The other part is it's just housing. It's housing for people that make this much. It's just housing in the sense that it's safe, decent, sanitary, and permanent. You'll see this thrown around a lot if you read into the HO5 report that David mentioned at the top. We talk about permanent supportive housing. All the permanency means is it's not time limited for the stay of the tenant. As long as they continue to qualify, then the tenant can continue to stay. This is in contrast to like transitional housing or temporary housing, emergency housing, things that tend to be more time limited, where one way or the other, after so many months or a year or 2 or up, you have to go. Permanent supportive housing is just, it's like an apartment. It's permanent in the sense that as long as you can pay the rent, you can continue to stay. So that's worth knowing as we get into all of this, set the background. Now let's talk about who are we talking about? And this data is specific to Lake Stevens. We're talking about our households, our people, by income. On this graph, the first 3 bars that you see, the colors are under 25 years old, orange is 25 to 44, green is 45 to 64, and blue is 65 years and over. The 3 bars shown all make below $19,999 a year in 2022 dollar values. So right there, you can see that's a couple hundred householders. And so we don't know how many people are in the household, but we do know there are this many householders whose total household income is at or below these levels. Moving on to the next group. And then our higher earners here. So this is Lake Stevens households by age, by income. And 0 to 30%, as I mentioned, for a household of 3 is $37,000. So, we're looking at a couple hundred or more households right now. Let's zoom in a little bit on that. So showing same graph, just zoomed in to a cap at 39,999 today. And I want to emphasize that this is data collected actually last year. So it's pretty close to today. This is the most current information we have for the city. 780 households, assuming a household size of 4. if I recall correctly, are extremely low income in Lake Stevens today. That's 385 who are over the age of 65. 602 households are extremely low income if they're 2 people. Sorry, 780 was for a household of 3. I apologize. That's the city's average household size. 602 households, because you're adjusting the income down. 600 with 2 people, 602 households are extremely low income. A 2-person household, 288 of which are 65 years or older. And that's basically the same if you have a 1-person household. You have basically the same number. So you're looking at about 600 or so 1 to 2 person extremely low income households in Lake Stevens today. Now, House Bill 1220 that got this all rolling, our continuing work to serve all economic segments of our community does include future need. This is today, but things will continue to change. Prices will, absent something really dramatic, continue to rise, and so we need to account for that into the future. And so the allocations from H05 and House Bill 1220 do account for that. So you have your 1,168 0 to 30% AMI housing units by 2044, according to H05. So that's how we derive that number. There's a lot more that goes into it, but in summary. Now, the other question that people ask is, well, is this just an us problem? Is this just Lake Stevens? Is it just, our area? How bad is it elsewhere? You can look in the appendix of the H05 report to see all the other cities and their allocations, but I think the most impactful way to examine why we need these kinds of housing units is this slide looking at the region's employment by the median income of the occupation. And this is for Kings, Snohomish, and Pierce County, recognizing that people do live in Lake Stevens and drive to Seattle or places in King County. There are 8,900 people that work in a job where in the middle of their career, they'll make $240,000 or more. Good for them. Another 520 people work in a job where mid-career income, whether they have yet to make that income or have already made it and exceeded it, is 215 to 240. On and on and on. At this point, you're wondering, why is the graph so tall? Why is there so much wasted space up high? And it's because we have 901,000 workers in the Central Puget Sound region, Snohomish, King, Pierce County, who work in a job where the mid-career income is $53,000 a year or less. Now, you might be dual income, but typically a doctor doesn't marry their barista. So, you're still looking at a number of households who are going to be cash strapped. So for Snohomish County, the "you must be this tall to ride" line for single family housing is $167,000. That was in 2022. Townhomes, condos, and apartments on down. And so what you can see is we've got 15% of the region's workforce could afford to buy something somewhere in Snohomish County. On a single income, we've got 28% that could afford to rent something somewhere in Snohomish County, regardless of where they work. And 72% of the region's workforce can do neither of those things. Now, when you combine incomes, if you're both making $53,000 a year, you're clearly not in the extremely low income category. But there are occupations that do pay $20,000, $30,000 a year max, or in the mid-career income. And that's worth knowing. And I can definitely get those jobs and those employment figures for you, but I think this is, in a simple way, more illustrative of the scope and why we're going to be talking about what we are tonight. So with that primer set, I think I will hand it over to Dwayne if I haven't taken too much time or done enough time. But I look forward to any questions you might have after the fact. So Dwayne, take it away.
Sure. My name is Dwayne Leonard. I'm the Executive Director for the Housing Authority of Snohomish County. I know you guys are studying your comp plan amendments and your buildable lands report, so I appreciate the opportunity to chime in here on your housing needs assessment. Just wanted to let you know the Housing Authority is a local government agency in Snohomish County. We do have 3 properties actually in Lake Stevens as well. The Craigmont Apartments and the Glenwood Apartments, which are both senior projects, and then a small family project called Stevens Circle. So we are partnering with your city, whether you know it or not. First off, this slide, how do we get to 1,100 units? First, let's talk about what is a 0 to 30% AMI unit. These are units that are basically rented to people that earn between $0 and $40,000 a year, depending on income and depending on family size. And yes, I did say 0. A lot of these units are filled with homeless families. And yes, there are homeless families in every jurisdiction in Snohomish County. It's very interesting to me that we were right after the food bank because as you saw the growth in the attendance and the use of the food bank, we know there are people in this income category because 20 to 25% of the families in the Lake Stevens School District utilize the free and reduced lunch program. And that is those are the same families in this income category that qualify for free lunch. So that's how we know they're there. So the people are there. We're serving the people in your community. We're not serving people coming from outside the community, from somewhere else. But essentially, the core problem that we have to solve is how do you build and maintain and rent units to people who essentially can't afford to pay rent. And that's very, very challenging, as you might imagine. Like I said, many of these people have zero income, so they pay zero rent. And then we have certain costs we have to cover. Hasco can be a good partner, but we don't have resources. So when we build buildings, we take debt out, and one of the main drivers of costs is our debt service that we have to pay, in addition to the construction costs. There are a couple ways we do that is using project-based vouchers and low-income housing tax credits, which provide part of the capital contribution to build a building. Project-based vouchers are vouchers we administer ourselves. Unfortunately, we are all out of those. So we're going to be looking to the county, to the 1590 money to fund some of that subsidy that we used to be able to provide with project-based vouchers. We just need more housing vouchers countywide for all income ranges. And so that's a big problem for us. And I'm sure, as all of you know, construction costs have risen dramatically over the years. We purchased a building in 1995 out of receivership. We spent $7.5 million on it. In 2023, we just had to tear it down and rebuild it, and it cost over $75 million. So a factor of 10x. And when that happens, obviously rents have to go up to cover the increased costs and the increased debt service of that. So, and then we also have to cover operating and maintenance costs, which, a housing voucher and a housing unit is one of the cheapest forms of subsidy that you can imagine. We can have subsidy of between $1,200 or $1,500 a month versus, a stay in emergency rooms or jails or hospital beds, which can be thousands of multiples beyond that per day. So this is why it's great to talk about this, because it is one of the most effective forms of subsidy. And it's also the most humanitarian and dignified as well. And then also service costs. A lot of these units that we build require services. A lot of the folks that live in these units have unmet medical needs, unmet addiction, or mental health needs as well. So that's another part of the cost. So next slide, Chris. One of the main challenges is siting. I'm sure you've probably all kept track of this. Different projects have been proposed throughout our county and in other counties. Recently in Kenmore, a project with Mercy Housing was turned down by the city staff, and now it's in Redmond and it's being batted around like a piñata. In our own county here in Edmonds, we had a project that was supported by the Edmonds Lutheran Church, and it was sited on property the church owned. We first started talking about this project in 2017. and it's 52 units, and it's just going to have construction completed this October. So it's taken about 7 years to build 52 units because of all the different machinations that we had to go through with that. In addition, there was a project in Everett that Everett School District was going to do with a nonprofit named Housing Hope to build housing on school district property. They spent 9 months engaging with the neighborhood, and then the project got voted down by a wide margin. So it was very sad to see that happen. And then currently we've seen in Stanwood a mental health facility for 20 beds. And I mean, this is in a county of over 830,000 people. 20 beds would more than double our mental health beds. And we can't even cite this location in a rural area. So it's very challenging. Obviously, public outreach is a critical component. And what else can I say? Next slide, Chris. Where are we now? I want this to sink in a little bit. Snohomish County currently has 1,222 0 to 30% AMI units countywide in operation today. And you guys are planning on doing another 1,168. So that would double the number of units we have countywide. The projections are that we are supposed to add 44,000 units of 0 to 30% AMI units countywide by 2044. So that's where you get 44,000 by 2044. I don't know if you've heard that before, but that's where that comes from. Obviously, that's going to be impossible to do. But I think what that's really telling us is how critical and important it is to actually get started. And that's one of the things I want to impress upon you tonight. I did have the ability to talk when the county was going through their Housing Affordability Regional Task Force, known as HART. Well, they asked, I got all of, I think, 5 or 10 minutes to address the group. One of the things they asked me, what was the 3 most critical things? No particular order. Political courage, the ability to fight NIMBYism, because this is going to bring out a lot of NIMBYs, and money. I mean, let's face it, you can't build housing without money. That's what I said back in 2019. It's still true today. What I would encourage you to think of this as more than just a plan. If there's no action that is driven by the plan, we need action. A plan is great, but we also need partnership. This work can't be done without partnerships. The private sector, I'm asked all the time, why don't we just let the private sector take care of this? The private sector cannot take care of building homes for people who can't afford to pay rent. That's all there is to it. Private sector companies have to make money to stay in business. So this has to be a partnership between government and private, and not just government at the state and county level, government at every level. I mentioned the project with Everett School District and Housing Hope. We're currently involved in a similar type project with Housing Hope in Edmonds School District on property in Linwood, surplus property at a school that we're in for permitting on right now. So it really is partnership at every level. There's lots the city can do, including someday maybe giving us money. But I know you guys collect 1406 funds and whatnot, but also things like waiving fees or donating land or variance waivers and stuff like that. So I know this is very challenging. I'm just here to, implore you all to do better. It's great that you're planning. I hope that you're also considering how to put that plan into action. So thank you for your time.
Do you have any questions for Chris or Dwayne? I appreciate your presentation.
I have a couple questions. Thank you. Thank you both for your presentation. Dwayne, I'm curious to hear more about both your project-based and tenant-based vouchers. Given that you're out of project-based vouchers and your tenant-based wait list is 8-ish years, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. What type of partnership does Hasco have to offer to developers to be able to create potentially set aside units in a larger complex where some of those units might have the subsidy that's needed?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. We have about 4,200 vouchers currently. A lot of our vouchers are what we call special vouchers. Like some are dedicated for veterans, so they're VASH vouchers, or mainstream, which deal with people coming out of retirement or institutional settings, not retirement settings, but institutional settings. So a lot of those vouchers aren't not necessarily good for project basing. We can only project base 20% of our vouchers. So that's 840 out of 4,200. We've already exceeded that. So as those people roll off, we can still issue project-based vouchers, but it takes a while. As you said, our waiting list used to be 8 years. It probably still would take that long. We're actually getting ready to open our waiting list in probably another year. But we will be inundated with applications. It's just a reality, and that's just the need. I have been making the county aware of the fact that we don't have project-based vouchers because, I mean, that's literally what is essential to do a lot of these projects. And so they've taken that into account on their the 1590 money, the 1/10 of 1% sales tax for housing. And they know they're going to have to subsidize a lot of these projects with M&O costs, so with rent basically. And that's how you do it, because the 9% tax credits, which are also so critical in getting something like that constructed, really that's a requirement. You have to pair the maintenance and operations with the capital contribution to build it. So, and our county only gets one project per year for a 9% award. So it takes a while to use those credits to build out. So there may be other opportunities in the future with regard to grants. There's state grants and federal grants that we can apply for as well. But it's just really critical to do as much as you can locally as well as at the state and federal level. And that's one of the things I would implore every city to do, is in your legislative agenda and talk to the federal legislatures about more housing resources, about more vouchers, because we could issue everything we're given in a minute.
Thank you. That's super helpful. What is the mechanism to expand your voucher capacity?
Basically, we have to wait for Congress to make more vouchers available at HUD. So it's all into the HUD budget. So if they approve more funding at the federal level, then it gets distributed throughout the country.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So in your final comments, so you mentioned that we need to do better. And I'm wondering what specific things we should be doing to move the needle in your estimation.
Well, it goes back to those 3 points. Political will, because political will, fighting NIMBYism, and money, because when those projects do come and are proposed in your community, it's going to take all 3 of those things.
One thing I can add, if I may, is on the money piece, is it's worth emphasizing or putting an exclamation point on, where does the money come from to close that gap between the cost of 4 walls and a roof that don't care the income of the person that lives there, and the income that the person can pay, or the rent the person can pay who does live there. And how you close that gap. Dwayne mentioned permit fee waivers, impact fee waivers, things like that. That's one example. Land donations, things like that. It all comes down. It's really frustrating, but it all comes down to money, and that's hard to discuss in what seems like a perpetually tight budget situation. I don't know of a city that says, oh, our budget is, we're just rolling in money. We're great. But nevertheless, that's what we have to confront. And that's why Dwayne mentioned the value of subsidizing housing, not jails or hospitals. Something that I often mention is the cost of an inpatient bed per day in the state is $3,800 a day. And if the person who's in that bed can't pay the cost because they don't have the money, they don't have health insurance, whatever the reason, that does become charity care that goes to everybody's property taxes. So every room, every unit, every bed that you can put someone in that keeps them out of a hospital bed that ends up becoming publicly subsidized, or a jail cell, which is part of the city budget, or at least law enforcement, that is money saved, even if it's not something that you can immediately see or really easily quantify. You've got to take it on faith to some degree that housing is more effective than those things, and you will see cost savings on those budgets in particular if you put people in housing. Go ahead, Dwayne. Sorry.
Well, no, yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. And one of the things, I don't know how much you know about housing authorities, but we do not have any taxing authority. So we don't have any dedicated revenue stream. We do have a contract with HUD to run our 4,200 vouchers. That's a fee for service contract we have. So basically the fee that we earn on that program covers the salaries and what benefits of the people that work on that program. Essentially, the rest of our revenue comes from owning 2,500 units and being a landlord. We don't get any sales tax from the state. We don't get any property taxes that we collect. So a lot of people think we're a deep-pocketed agency or a deep-pocketed arm of HUD. Yes, we do have a contract with HUD that, provides us about $70 million a year, but 65 million of that goes out the same day it comes in. And the other 5 million pays the 30 or so staff, 35 staff I have that run that program. So, I'm not sure, a lot of people don't realize that. And that's why I sometimes sound like I'm holding my hat out everywhere I go.
Any other questions? I got a couple of things, Dwayne, and Chris. So one of the issues, when it comes to housing is the lack of, truly buildable land. Any land we have left in Lake Stevens is so incredibly difficult for anyone to build upon, that it becomes, just the development of that land to get to curb, gutter, sidewalk, dirt is so extremely expensive, right? So is Hasco or your other organizations doing anything in an effort to help expand UGA into areas that would make a more usable land possible for building projects? That's where cities like us really need support, is we need to be able to expand our land capability so that we can do projects that are actually reasonably priced, and instead of being up slopes that the grades are just incredibly expensive to have to build upon. So those are some helps we could use from organizations like yours so that we could provide truly maybe kind of sort of affordable housing projects.
Yeah, land is certainly a big cost driver for all home construction, for any multifamily or any home construction, certainly. We try to keep our legislative agenda a little more focused. So I have to say we haven't been out there advocating for expanding the UGA. It kind of dilutes our own message for just funding, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Something I can add is, it's not about building new. Very few 0 to 30, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dwayne, but very few 0 to 30% projects are going to get built brand new. The first person moves in is like, wow, what a lovely brand new room I'm in. That said no one ever, basically. And so it's really acquisition of existing properties, hotel or motel. You hear a lot about that currently. It's kind of in vogue with the county. But that's something else that really matters and really helps. And it's a way of getting around that the land form issue that you raised, Mayor, because yeah, the building's already there. It's just acquisition, and then you just work on the O&M costs and cost of purchase of the land or of the building, excuse me. That's been the going form for affordable housing at all income levels in Snohomish County for decades is buy it used, don't build it new. So that land, slopes and so on and so forth is less of a preeminent concern when it comes to affordable housing, especially deeply subsidized housing.
Okay. Anything else for these two? All right, hearing none. Hey, appreciate the presentation, appreciate the information, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, we're gonna move to citizens' comments. So I have two folks already with green slips for comments on the rezone on item number 11. We're gonna do comments on that section under that section. Does that make sense, Eric and Janice? So we'll wait for your comments then, that's okay. And then the admin, what I would say is that we ask that you don't provide anything new to what's already been presented during your comments. So great. Perfect. Let's go online. Anybody online?
I don't see any hands up, but I do have quite a few people online. So as the mayor stated, if you'd like to speak during citizen comments tonight, not related to the Sparman rezone, anything else, please raise your digital hand. Not seeing.
All right, seeing none. And then is there anybody else? I got these two, no general comments. Okay. Let's move forward then with council business, Council President.
All right. Fellow council members, how about if we start with Councilmember Tadgett?
Nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Ewing,
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Jorstad.
Nothing from me tonight. Thank you.
Three. Council Donahue.
I do have something to report.
Okay.
So I attended the last portion of the planning commission meeting at a conflict, but I was able to get in there at the end. And essentially the work continues on the comprehensive plan. This time, Planner Levitan discussed the public services and utility portion of the comprehensive plan. So that's your fire, sewer, water, school districts, that sort of thing. And sum it up, essentially, there's, as with all things, a heavy emphasis from state legislation regarding climate goals, equity, that type of thing. And so the commissioners, were asked to provide their feedback, and the proposed changes will go out to all the partner utilities and then come back, and there will be public review and all that, and we'll see it at some point as part of a presentation on the overall comprehensive plan. So that's all I have.
Great. Councilmember Daughtry.
Met with the Youth Advisory Council last night. They are planning 2 different events coming up. One is going to be an art show that will be here at the mill. Don't really have it. It's on June 1st, I believe. And then they're also doing a blood drive that will be at Lundin Park, and that'll be mid-June sometime. So more information to come on that. Look for it on social media. And there's 41 spots for the blood drive, so we need to get those filled.
Thank you. Councilmember Shipman.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, I attended the school board meeting on March 13th. And like all the first meetings of the month, we got to meet the students that were highlighted, as well as faculty that was highlighted. So it was a packed room, standing room only, which is always a good thing to see. Support of friends and families, and hear directly from the kids, as well as some of our student or our staff members as well. We did have special services highlighted, and particularly for vision impaired. And they had a couple of students they highlighted with some video. And oh my goodness, if that doesn't warm your heart, nothing will. The things our special services do in our school district is nothing short of amazing. It is amazing what they do with these kiddos, and it's something very much to be proud of. And I encourage people to look into it if they have a child that might need some special services. I mean, we are top notch and do some amazing things in our early learning center. One of the sayings that they had to say that really struck a chord with me is, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And the things they do are nothing short of amazing. We did have a couple of parents speak at the meeting. Both of them expressed concerns in regards to safety up at Cavallero and some of the recent incidences that have happened up there, with some violence. And, what can parents do to join together with the school district as a team, in addition to drug and alcohol use and some other behaviors that are concerning to parents that their kids are bringing home from CAV. And the board, as well as the superintendent, both reached out and said, of course, these are public comments. This isn't a dialogue. Please reach out to us to start a conversation. So hopefully that happened behind the scenes, so they feel, together they can create a path to move forward to address some of these issues. But overall, it was a very upbeat meeting. Like I said, it's always wonderful to see the kids. And this time our staff that was represented were our para educators, and sometimes they're a little bit underrepresented in compared to the teachers. So that was really nice to see. And then, like I said, our special services are second to none.
Great, thank you. I have nothing further
Okay, great.
for you.
Good stuff, Council. For sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and forego my comments. Let's move forward to the city department report. Barb.
Thank you, Council. So we will go ahead and get started. Let's make sure this is the right screen.
Is her mic on?
Is it on? Hello? Is this better?
All right. Perfect.
Oh. Okay. It's got to be really close. Okay, so let me go ahead and get started on our 2023 year-end financial update. So overall, our funds, this is looking at all of our funds, revenue came in about 98% of budget and expenditures were at 65%. This is actually fairly consistent. Prior year, we were at 95% of budget for revenues and 60% at expenditures. So this is not looking out of the ordinary. Revenues and expenditures, the variances are mainly due to the ongoing multi-year projects. Some are funded by reimbursement grants, so it kind of goes both ways. Additionally, we did have some various open staff positions. And as we know, we had at least one union contract that didn't actually pass until 2024. So we'll see some of those come forward in the budget amendment coming in another week or so. Overall, we continue to be fiscally responsible and show a strong cash balance going into 2024 to fund the council budget priorities. Looking at our major revenue sources citywide, revenue sources are color coded in this table. I have shown this multiple times before for anybody who hasn't seen it. The first column is a source of revenue. The second column is the fund or bucket of money. The third column shows whether the revenues are restricted to certain purposes or unrestricted. As you can see, the majority of them have some type of restriction on them. The only ones that we have that don't have any restrictions is mainly property tax, sales tax, and utility taxes. I've included the 2022 as well as the 2023 budget, as well as estimated and actual. The last column, I have highlighted some that we'll kind of look at a little deeper on the next slide. The last column is your increase from 2023 or 2022 to 2023. And then the new addition to this table, well, there's two. The first one is investment interest all the way at the bottom row. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more on the next slide, but also the transportation benefit program, just slightly down from the middle in green. As you can see, we estimated coming about 884,000 by the end of the year, and we surpassed that. So budget to actual, we are about 25% above our budget. about 6% above our expectations. So the only expenditures that came out of that were for salaries and benefits last year. This year, we do plan on doing some planning on projects and getting them moving. So we will start seeing some expenditures on those. So this is just another way to look at our revenue and our major revenue sources in a bar format. You can see the sales tax. That is the one that's actually at the bottom of the chart. Sales tax is our largest revenue source, making up 17% of our citywide revenues, and they were up 7% over the prior year. Property taxes are our second largest, make up about 14% of our revenues. Investment interest, as I mentioned, makes up 6% of our revenues. This revenue source has never been included in our major revenue sources. And it may not continue to in the future, but in 2023, investment interest increased by nearly 274%. So over 22 and ended at just under $2.9 million. Last year, we received just under 800,000. And then prior to that, in prior years, we've received somewhere around 100,000 or 200,000. So this is really good, really helps us with our capital projects, with the staffing, with the union contracts that we need to budget for at this point. So this is actually really good for us. Some of the other ones that have actually decreased, real estate excise tax. So real estate excise tax, traffic park impact fees, and building and land use permits have all decreased. REIT has decreased significantly in the last few years. All of these really are related to the inventory shortage. I won't say a shortage in inventory, but decrease in the amount of inventory to buy and to sell and to build. Also has decreased our construction sales tax as well. The traffic impact and park impact fees have decreased 45% and 32% respectively over the prior year. These are used to pay for capital projects. So we will keep a close eye on these to see how that fits in with our priorities and our upcoming capital budgets. And then building permits, they do continue to decrease, which we actually had expected and anticipated. We did just recently get a report from the planning department that their building permits and land use permits are up in the first quarter of 2024. So it's starting to trend upward this year. So that will be helpful. This is a closer look at our sales tax by classification. I've talked about this before. Our construction sales tax, we put the majority of our construction sales tax into a separate fund for one-time capital purchases and reserve. So construction sales tax has decreased 21% over 2022. And that's kind of what I mentioned with the building. There's less building going on, less construction sales tax. It now makes up 17% of our total sales tax in 2023. In prior years, it was 23% last year and 26% of our total sales taxes the year before. So it's definitely decreasing, but that is anticipated and we have forecasted that out. Retail sales tax has increased approximately 16%. It now makes up 51% of the total sales tax, where it used to be about 44. So that is definitely shown in our additional retail establishments in the city. And then accommodation and food, that one is obviously all of our food eateries. That has increased about 9% over prior year. So we'll jump over to expenditures, give you an overview of the city expenditures by type. I've also included a comparison between 2022 and 2023 year end. So personnel, that is the largest portion of our expenditures, makes up 43% of our citywide expenditures. Last year, it made up 35% of our total expenditures. Costs have increased 18%. Yet we were still about 8% under budget. Last year, we were about 13%. Prior year in 2022, we were about 13% under budget based on the inability to fill positions. So we definitely were able to fill more positions last year than we were the year before. Capital outlays are about 11% of expenditures. They definitely ended under budget, which we anticipate, and we will roll a lot of that budget forward. I am meeting with capital project engineering tomorrow to go over those. It looks like we're estimating about 15 million projects will roll forward from 2023 into 2024. And then interfund transfers is another large type of expenditure, and that just equals revenue. So revenues and expenditures, it's just moving from one fund to another. So, and I did add the 2024 budget on the capital on the lower graph that shows the year-end comparison just for the capital, showing how much we've budgeted in 2024, but that's compared to our 2023 budget and what we actually spent in 2023, showing how much we need to actually roll forward from one year into the next. So. And I'll just quickly go over general fund. I'm not going to go too deep into this. There's a lot of information in your packet, which is also online in the finance tab of the website. General fund operating ended at 7.7 million. Don't have that number on there, but it is the dark blue column on the right for December. So you can see that is more than it was the prior year. So revenues, we ended with as a positive this year with almost 20 million in revenues and about 19.2 in expenditures. We do have some funding, some expenditures rolling forward, but this is a positive for us to not be on the negative side. Additionally, the chart or the graph on the bottom shows our managerial funds. As we mentioned, these, when we do our year-end reporting to the auditor's office, all of these funds roll together, but we keep them separate. The contingency fund has 7.9 million. The pandemic recovery, which was the previously the ARPA funds. We have those budgeted out for capital projects, in part the municipal services campus, as well as the museum. Those are some of the items that are in there. We have about $6 million in there. And then also the permit fund is sitting at about 3.6 million. And that gets all the permit funds for land use and for building permits go into that. And then we utilize those funds for actual expenditures for that department, as well as the other departments that do permit type work. So permit reviews. And this is just an overall look at all of our funds. I know this is just kind of a lot of information, but I highlighted a few things. Permit funds, as I mentioned previously, building and land use permits are down. We're down in 2023, and expenditures are for reimbursements from the other funds. The pandemic recovery, we only use about 30% of the expenditure budget. Again, a lot of projects we've yet to begin or things we had planned out for a number of years out. Our transportation benefits, as I mentioned, 27% more budgeted revenues, and it does include about $15,000 in interest. So that isn't all transportation benefit taxes. But it is good that as our sales tax goes up, those, as you remember, those transportation benefit taxes go up as well. So mitigation funds, they're capital and the park mitigation. I already mentioned those. Those are project related. And then the capital project funds, significant portions of those are going to be projects we're rolling into 2024, as well as grants. And then the capital equipment, computer, police, public works, those are at the bottom. Those are potentially going to roll forward into 2024 as well. So just items of note there. Everything else looks really good in our budget and our forecasts. That is all I had at this point. I do have the budget amendment that I'm working on now with a couple of other departments that will be coming forward next week for review. And then we will go into looking at forecasting out what that looks like, what it looks like our year end, and what the budget amendment will look like as well.
Barb,
Yes.
are you ready? Are you ready for questions?
Yes.
Why do we still have to have the aerator equipment replacement fund on the books?
We don't. It actually got zeroed out in 2023. So going forward, we shouldn't see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. That was an easy one.
Any other questions for Barb?
I do just have a comment from your presentation. It says the city's robust financial position, strong local economic growth, strong financial performance for the last 3 audited fiscal years, and low debt were key elements that contributed to Moody's decision to upgrade us to an AA1 bond rating, which is second highest rating. So that's kudos to our city staff and mayor for their management of the funds with the city to help us achieve an excellent rating.
I can go ahead and share a little bit more on that too. Let me actually share that out for you really quick. So this is a really quick update that our underwriters put together this report for us. Just a couple things of note, as Councilmember Ewing had mentioned, our bond rating is fantastic now. I actually had misspoken on it another day in one of the meetings and said we went from an A3 to A2, and I remembered the next day, wait, that was wrong. We went from A2 to A1. And so I think we talked about there's only about 7 other jurisdictions that are at that rating or above with us. So it is really good. But as the bond overall, the bond was introduced to the market the end of February. We sold the bonds and received the funding April 13th. We made the purchase on the municipal services complex. I believe it was on the 15th. So everything's kind of moving smoothly on that. The remainder of the bonds are going to go for the tenant improvements there, focusing on this area over here at the park and in the future, getting us out of this area, and then the museum, etc. The good thing on the bonds, we one, as you mentioned, the bond rating is really good. And so one of the things that helped us with is we went for $10 million of bonds, and we are only paying on $9.61 million of those bonds. We purchased them as a premium, or they're purchased as a premium for us. So that and our overall 4.02% true interest cost just shows that how our bond rating, as well as just made the market want our bonds more and gave us a lower rate. So it's really good news for us. And I just wanted to make sure to bring this forward to you. We did do the 30-year bond as council had wanted. The first payment will be made in December, and the final payment will be made in 2053, unless we choose to refund that later in the future. We can do that after 10 years. And the annual debt service is about $586,000 per year. A portion of that will be paid from the rents that we receive, and the rest will be coming out of the real estate excise tax. So,
Barb, did you say that was a 30-year bond?
yes.
It indicates 20-year on this chart here.
On the chart. Oh. I don't think that's correct.
Okay, so confirmation is 30-year.
30 years.
All right.
30 years, says 20-year application.
Yeah. Yeah, the last payment is made in 2053.
All right, any other questions for Barb? Okay, great report. Appreciate your work, hard work on that, Barb. And
Thank you.
as far as the bond ratings concerned, it's really a testimony to the amount of work that all of our staff has been working on and doing with efficiencies and trying to get more government out of the tax dollars that we do have, and being more efficient with them. And I think it's just I don't even know what I'm saying. in the city meeting we had this last week, I just stressed to all of our employees how important it is to, even all the way down into the parks, folks taking care of the parks and the streets. It's those folks that are making the difference that gets us to these great ratings, and I appreciate all their work. Cool. with that, let's move forward to a vote on the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to pass the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Thank you very much. We're gonna go to this closed record hearing. We're gonna have a closed record hearing and first and final reading of ordinance number 1181. So with that, I will give the floor to Melissa. One of the things I noted that if you could address, it talks about that we need to that the ordinance includes exhibit 1 and exhibit 2, but I see the exhibits listed as exhibit 1 and exhibit B.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I can address that. Before I do that, though, I did want to turn it to our city attorney, I think is going to prepare a little statement to the council. Did you want to do that now, Greg, or after I do
Sure,
my
we can do
PowerPoint?
it right now.
Okay, thank you.
First, we'll address the issue of a closed record hearing. That doesn't mean that public can't talk. But what it means is you can't provide the city council with any new information about the properties involved, about what you believe might be impacts of the from the rezone. All that needed to be provided at the open record hearing that was held before the hearing examiner. And the reason for that is there's a Washington law that says there can only be one open record hearing on a development on a rezone application such as this one. So that's what that means. So if you want to speak during the public portion of the meeting, you can do so, but please refer to information that's in the record. Don't try to bring new information to the council because they can't consider it. They can only consider what's in the record. This is also a quasi judicial matter. That is, the city council in deciding whether to approve the rezone or not can't do so based on discretion, whether they think it's a good idea for the rezone or not. That's not the issue. The issue is before them is whether the applicant has complied with all the city code requirements and whether the conditions of approval imposed by the hearing examiner are reasonable conditions or not. That's their job tonight. When they act in a quasi judicial capacity, the state appearance of fairness doctrine applies. And what that is, it's a state law that requires that the council not only act in a fair manner practically, but they must give also the public the appearance of doing so. So I'm going to ask a few questions just to aid in that regard. I'm going to ask each of the council member whether any of you have spoken privately to any proponent of this rezone or anyone who is opposing this rezone. Councilmember Ewing, if you've done that, could you just give us a brief summary of what that
I can do that. Eric Turner reached out to me. He lives in the area. He's present here tonight. Had concerns prior to being notified about the situation, and I met with him at his residence and discussed the situation. And then once we were notified that we were no longer to have discussions with that, I didn't have any additional conversations with him.
Anybody else? Is there anyone on the council that feels for whatever reason that you can't be a fair judge of this application and make your decision just based on the requirements of the Lake Stevens Municipal Code? No one? Okay. And then we have a question for anyone in the audience. Is there anyone here who feels any of the council members should not be participate in the decision for whatever reason that you might have, that because they've spoken to anyone or you believe they can't be fair for some reason? Anyone wish to make an objection of that regard? No one? Okay. All right. Well,
Anybody online?
As our city attorney just stated, if there's anybody that has any objection, please raise your hand.
no one?
Nope, nope.
Right. Melissa?
Okay, thank you. So I'm just gonna address the mayor's question real quick about the exhibits. So it is a little confusing perhaps. In the staff report, we have two exhibits. Exhibit 1 is the draft ordinance, and embedded within that draft ordinance, there are two exhibits. Exhibit A, which is the rezone map, and then Exhibit B, which is the hearing examiner recommendation. And then in the staff, the second exhibit in the staff report is also the hearing examiner recommendation. So that you have the copy of the full recommendation with Exhibit B, which is the transcript from the hearing examiner recommendation. So those are the two, there's two Exhibit Bs, if you will, but they're embedded in one, the staff report, and in the ordinance, and the other is in actual hearing examiner recommendation. Does that help clarify that?
I got it, Melissa.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I will proceed. I have a brief presentation about the rezone prepared. It's fairly short. I'm just going to go through the highlights of it, and then we can open it up to the public testimony that is, I think there's a couple of folks who have signed up to speak. So excuse me. Well, I'm Melissa Place. I'm a principal planner with the city. And before consideration for the council tonight is a closed record hearing for the Sparman rezone. I'll provide a little bit of applicant information on this. The applicant is Westcott Homes. The property owner is Adabel Lee Sparman Family Trust and Ralph Elof Sparman Marital Trust. The address is 10720 South Lake Stevens Road. It's approximately 9.71 acres on 2 parcels, and the request is to rezone from R6 to R8 to 12 zoning district. Concurrent with the rezone application, the city did receive plans to develop the property under a preliminary plat for a 96 townhome unit lot subdivision. This aerial shows the property location of the city. It's basically the south end of the lake, and you can see South Lake Stevens Road is highlighted. It's just highlighted in the yellow, the 2 properties that are under the subject application for the rezone and the preliminary plat. This shows at least the location of the city, and it's near, you can see the Watermark neighborhood is to the west, and directly south of that, we have some new single family development that is what we refer to as the Color and Ridge 1 and 2 developments. So a little information about this rezone. This is comprehend plan designation medium density residential. That's what our current comprehensive plan designates it. There is no change proposed to this. The current zoning, as I said, is R6, and then the proposed zoning is R8 to 12. Per our Lake Stevens Municipal Code Table 1436, the proposed zoning district is compatible with the MDR comp plan designation, which is why it's a site-specific rezone and not a larger comp plan amendment to that. This map shows the current zoning on the left. So you can see the R6 is sort of a darker yellow color, and that there's other properties adjacent to it that are already R6. Just directly north of that, there's some lighter yellow, it's R4. And then directly south is some R8 to 12 already. So the proposed zoning is on the right. And if this rezone is approved, then our zoning map would change to look like the map on the right-hand side of this. The application was received back in April of last year, and we have publicly noticed both the application and this hearing this evening. We held a public meeting back in July of last year. This rezone is a type 4 permit, which means there is a hearing examiner recommendation to City Council, which is what is attached to the staff report this evening for you. And City Council does make the final decision in a closed record public hearing, which is what we're doing tonight. The hearing examiner had held the open record public hearing back in February, so about a month ago of this year. And at that time, the rezone was determined exempt from SEPA per the categorical exemptions under state code. R8 to 12 is a permitted site-specific rezone if it meets the city's criteria that we have established in our code for rezones, since it is compatible with our overlying land use designation of medium density residential. We did receive public comment on this project. We received written comments from 11 individuals on the rezone, and 8 members of the public provided testimony at the public hearing that we had last month. There are some public comments that are received that are specific to the plat application, and those have been addressed at the project review level or part of the preliminary plat application that the hearing examiner has made a decision on, but it is contingent upon this rezone approval from the council. The comments that we received have included, this is specific to the rezone, concerns about traffic congestion, sight distance visibility at the intersection of 15th Street Southeast and South Lake Stevens Road, stormwater runoff, water quality, and adequacy of school facilities. Just a little evaluation on the traffic and a summary of the traffic impact analysis and a memo were submitted for the project by the applicant. And that memo and the TIA determined that the affected intersections, or intersections that are nearby and adjacent to the development, will operate at acceptable levels of service with the proposed change in zoning to R8 to 12. There's an increase of essentially 10 trips over the existing zoning, which has a very little effect on the levels of service at key intersections. So the conclusion of their TIA was essentially that it did not impact the levels of service at the nearby intersections. The proposed rezone essentially advances state and city goals and policies under the Growth Management Act to provide these middle housing options. Since this is a proposed townhome development, that is one thing that is important, because there is this middle missing housing, is what we call it. So this would help promote that. The proposed rezone is consistent with a need to plan for increased residential density based on the city's adopted growth targets. And the hearing examiner has determined that this rezone request is consistent with the goals and policy of our comprehensive plan, complies with the Growth Management Act, and conforms to our Lake Stevens Municipal Code. So this is my last slide. Just in summary, the findings and the hearing examiner recommendation is as noted in his recommendation that's attached to the staff report and the packet this evening, that it does meet the approval criteria for rezones as set forth in our code, that it meets SEPA, or the State Environmental Policy Act, and the public notice requirements that we require, that the hearing examiner held an open record public hearing last month, February 22nd, and ultimately recommended conditional approval of this rezone. So this evening, staff is asking council to adopt ordinance number 1181 following this closed record public hearing with consideration of that hearing examiner recommendation and the entire project record. And so that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And then I also wanted to add that we do have members of the applicants team in the audience this evening, as well as online virtually, in case there's questions that arise that they may be helpful in answering.
So I have a question about the proposed turn lane or whatever term they used at 15th Street and South Lake Stevens Road. I didn't see anything in there that indicated like what the status that was, if it was just a recommendation and what happens with that recommendation.
Sure. So because that particular impact is not specific to the rezone, it was specific in the preliminary plat, it has been addressed in the preliminary plat recommendation by the decision by the hearing examiner. So he did have a condition of approval that there be a signage and striping plan that the applicant provides to the city, and we will review that at the time of construction plan approval. But essentially, there was concerns about blocking the intersection from vehicles. And so there was a queuing analysis that was conducted by the applicant's consultant, traffic consultant, and then the city's traffic engineer, the city's engineer, and we had a third-party traffic engineer do a review of that. And as a result, there was this recommended condition for doing signage and striping to essentially not block the intersection. So you would most likely see some potential stop bar, and then some painting on the pavement that may indicate no stopping at the intersection, and potentially a dedicated left turn pocket lane for folks coming out of Watermark and this neighborhood, because it will connect, to essentially not block the intersection. There's also a discussion about a C curbing in there. So I will say at this point, a lot of those details are going to be worked through at the construction plan review level as we continue to work with the applicant on meeting those that condition of approval that the hearing examiner set forth in the preliminary plat. So it's part of that one.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's say you indicated on the rezone here that the hearing examiner recommendation is conditioned as a conditional approval. What are those conditions?
Sure. So there are, I believe, 3 conditions in the hearing examiner recommendation. So it is on page, let's see, I guess this would be 6 of the hearing examiner's recommendation that's attached to Exhibit 1 in your staff report. And the first condition is Exhibit 7 depicts the area to be rezoned. This rezone is contingent upon the hearing examiner's recommendation of approval and final approved by city council. Upon approval, that change has to be incorporated into our official zoning map. That's condition 1. And then 2, the rezone approval by the city council must first be obtained prior to the preliminary subdivision being approved. So that's where it's contingent. And then 3, that all future development has to comply with federal, state, and local regulations in effect at the time of application. Those are the 3 conditions for the rezone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's important to note, this is just a rezone. There's no specific development project that's before you or has been before staff yet for.
I have one additional question. Given that this is a rezone, thank you for that clarification. You may not have an answer, but I just want to clarify. In 2 different places, it cites that this development is meant to meet the deficit of middle housing that we have within City of Lake Stevens. And while townhomes are a type of housing that could help meet that deficit, doesn't it depend on how much those townhomes ultimately sell for to determine whether or not they're reaching or they're available for folks that we have that are less than 100% AMI?
So that's a great question. And I think the presentation by Hasco and AHA earlier is a interesting segue because it's in the same evening as we're having this. So the this particular application was submitted back in last year in 2023, and we had a deficit of essentially 711 housing units at that time based on our growth targets that were adopted. Now we are analyzing new growth targets with the adoption of the new comp plan in 2024. And as part of that, we are now having to change and look at what housing we need, which is mainly this affordable housing that we've been talking about this evening. So that will potentially change our rezone criteria. So right now, though, this application is currently under the old house, if you will, the old growth targets. And I may have Dave speak more to that if you have anything you want to add more on that. But the town, sorry, go ahead, Russ, too.
No, I might just answer your question in a little more straightforward manner.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Your answer was
townhomes
fine.
are historically classified as, yes, there will be a price point at the future time of development, but the housing data puts townhomes usually in that 80 to 100% AMI bracket, where a single family home is going to be the 100 to 120% AMI bracket. So based on the housing statistics, yes, we would predict that it would house people at a different income level than what we've seen developed over the last, say, 10, 15 years predominantly.
Thank you both.
Any other questions for Melissa? Okay, hearing none, let's go to testimony phase or comments phase, and we will go ahead and start with Janice Thompson. And we would ask that you limit to 3 minutes on your comments. Janice.
So can we comment on anything, or is there things that we can't comment on?
You can comment on anything related to the issue of whether the research.
Okay, well, you'll probably just have to tell me to
If
stop.
you,
at
if
some
you say
point.
anything out of order, yeah, I'll jump in.
First of all, I went to the hearing examiners meeting over at Planning and Development because of the Zoom issues that we seem to have had, or I seem to have for some reason with no one else, but getting in on the Zoom meetings here. We had no audio. When it first started, I have no idea what the hearing examiner was saying, probably was saying things I wasn't even supposed to be saying. We ended up having to hook up to a phone and huddled around a phone to be able to hear what the hearing examiner was saying. That should be fixed. I've lived here 44 years. And I served on, when the GMA went into effect, I served on the governance council. And we were trying to determine how we were going to do this. There was a huge disconnect between the downtown area and the South Lake Stevens area. Should we create a new city there? Should we do one city? We really wanted to do 2 cities, but it wasn't cost effective. And so we decided, no, we need to concede that we need to be one city around the lake. We envisioned this one city only because it was cost effective. I don't recall ever discussions of the constant rezones that we've seen. There were plans laid out that, okay, you know, for instance, by Tom Thumbs, these would be the areas that would go high density housing because of the resources that were there. There was gas, there was a grocery store, there was a couple of restaurants and things. But all it took was for somebody to come in and apply for a rezone, and the city just handed it out. And it's like, you must be kidding. I mean, the transit was there and everything. And then I even think in one particular case, they even threw a dog in for the police department when it was all done. So that didn't sit so well with me. The constant rezones, and the amount of foreign money that's come into. This just isn't local developers that are coming in a lot of cases, which I have no problem. But when there's so much money that comes in that determines, it's like, it's not just your average developer. I know some of these average developers, they're using their own money or their own banks and resources. But that's how we end up with some of these messes that I believe that we've ended up with because we don't have the infrastructure. When we talked about when the area got designated as the growth management area, it's like, yeah, we need roads. Where's the roads? The roads are these narrow little things that go through neighborhoods. The lots are so big that, when I was a kid, our parents, when we misbehaved, they were like, go play out in the road. Well, that's the only place these kids can play now is out in the road.
Mayor, we're at 3 minutes.
Okay, 3
Yeah,
minutes?
yes, the timer's here.
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
I'm not reading the timer. Anyway, in closing, you need to look at your codes. The growth is here. We have more than met our growth targets from what I remember from how many years ago. We just keep changing that. But our housing codes need to change. Our level of service on our roads definitely needs to change. This isn't going to get any better.
Thank you, Janice. And Eric Turner.
That's my machine impression.
Okay.
Well, thank you for a chance to chat today. A couple of things. So number one, I represent over 300 members of our community that have signed a petition with concerns around the rezone. So many of the people online are here to support this conversation here tonight. Personally, I did reach out to the builder 2 times to see if we can engage with them in conversation around helping to make this acceptable. No response. We are not trying to stop building. What we want is our concerns to be addressed. And so I want to bring out some of the important items that are in the packet, but it's a really long packet because we've tried multiple times to express our concerns. So here's the key items. Number one, the drainage from this will end up in the lake. The vault will drain into the lake eventually. The traffic report was approved prior to anyone from the city traffic commission actually looking at the site. This was brought up in the hearing examiner hearing. They had not actually looked at it. So all the striping stuff you heard was because it had never been looked at. We brought it up at the hearing examiner. That seems like we have shirked some of our responsibility from a city standpoint to make sure that the request is what it should be. I'll say a liberal reading of the SEPA requirements allowed it to be circumvented. Mostly because there's a concern raised early on around multiple wetland areas. There was a survey performed by the potential builder during a very dry season where they said that there's actually not 5 wetland zones. I don't know how they got to some of them because trees are down all over that area because they came down last winter when there was a lot of rain. So the area that they would have had to survey is covered in trees. So I may be a little bit skeptical there. The housing available and the being built in Silver Hill area more than meets our current city requirements around growth. So there's a conversation around affordable housing. The units right next to Tom Thumb that have been sold are selling for more than $500,000. These townhomes will clearly go for more than 500,000. So your whole affordability question, this doesn't fit. It's not really a different income bracket, honestly. Another item that we have been very concerned about is a community that we have requested some help with is this rezone is asking for an allowance to build 13 to 20 foot tall walls and then 40 foot tall, 30 foot tall buildings on top of that, which means that the people potentially living in these townhouses will be 60 feet up, looking down into the backyards of neighbors. There's no real need for retaining wall there. If you're gonna build a house, build it at the same level as the houses around it, so you don't have people looking in through people's bedroom wall windows or bathroom windows, right? Why are we setting ourselves up for that? Clearly, there's some traffic issues here. We as a community are very interested in engaging in a conversation that helps us make good decisions around this. And I'll say the last thing is that the plan.
We're at 3 minutes.
Go
Thank
take,
you.
go take a few
The
minutes.
planned plat puts 98 townhomes on half the acreage, which actually makes it a request for 24 houses per acre. The loophole here is that they can take advantage of the gross acreage, but there's two plats or two zones here. They're really asking for 24. They're really building 24. This is not 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Is there anybody online?
I don't see anybody online. Again, if you would like to speak on the Sparman zone, please raise your digital hand. No, I do have one.
You have one?
Yeah, let me bring her in. Laura, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes to speak to the council on the Sparman rezone.
Okay, I just wanted to talk about making sure that the points that like as where I live in the neighborhood that's right next to it, and I live on the street of 15th Street. And I just want to make sure that the council knows that I just feel like I don't understand how that they can have as many with 96 townhomes when we are trying to get out of our neighborhood multiple times different today. The worst times are in the morning and the evening, and sometimes in the middle of the day, and especially when the kids get out of school. Well, and I myself have to inch across this intersection and wait usually a couple minutes or a minute sometimes for someone to stop so that I can turn. And then I have to inch across because there's so many cars to my right. I cannot see if anyone is coming. So I know this has been talked about, but I just feel like my daughter, multiple of our neighborhood members, and one has gotten into an accident very recently. It's very dangerous. And the next thing is I am a substitute teacher in the school district, and I substitute at Glenwood, which is the school that, these new homes would be going into. And this Glenwood is already overcrowded. They have 8 portables on their property, and there is no more room for more. So
Laura, I stop you there, Laura.
Yeah, ma'am, are you referencing, is the information you're giving council tonight, was this given to the hearing examiner?
Yes.
Okay, that's, as long as it's in the
And
record.
Laura, what is your last name?
Turner.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. You have another minute and a half. If you want to finish.
I just wanted to make it clear that, I feel like there's just so much development, and there's not really a lot of thought about our kids and how much growth is happening, and the schools are totally packed and there's nowhere for them to go. And the teachers are teaching so many students. So that's a very big concern for me and for so many people that signed the petition. So I just, and I also just feel like this, just in general, I said this, and it just is not a good place to put these massive townhomes on these massive walls. It just is not. And someone said in this that this is going to be, you want it to be rezoned for 8 to 12. But a couple of years before that, it was changed from an R4, and it's just changing so quickly to such high density where everything around it is nothing like that. And we're not asking for you not to build. We're just asking that it stay the same, the rezone, build for what it's supposed to be built for R6. And it was already changed a couple years to increase to R6. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else online?
I don't see anybody else online.
Okay. Melissa, back into your hands. Do you have any further comment?
I don't have any further,
Oh, close the public
you.
comment portion.
Oh, let me go ahead and close the public comment. Back to you, Melissa.
Okay. I don't have any further notes to add right now. I just am happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay. Any other questions for Melissa?
Greg, can we ask a question about the preliminary plat process?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And my question would be, the preliminary plat has been approved by the hearing examiner, is that correct? Subject to this approval of the rezone?
That is correct. Yes, it's contingent on the council approving the rezone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess with that, the final engineering plans for the preliminary plat have not been approved, is that correct?
That's correct. They haven't been submitted to the city at this point.
Which would address the traffic issues.
It would address the conditions of approval that were that are required through the hearing examiner's decision on the preliminary plat.
Okay.
Yeah.
For example, at the intersection, striping is.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, it gets that specific in the preliminary plat, whereas the rezone
Right.
does not, address those.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're right.
Greg, I have a quick question. Is a quasi judicial hearing, what is the finality of our decision? Is this, I'm assuming after a certain time period, a certain process, this issue could come up before us again. Is that correct? So for example, if it was not rezoned, what would it take to apply for a rezone down the road?
Well, if it's denied, then there's a time period in our code that before the applicant could submit a new request.
I would have to look at that, but really the applicant would have to show a change in condition would be the specific criterion to satisfy if it came back before the council again at the next phase.
Okay, thank you.
One additional question about that. If we were interested in discussing or securing a development agreement, say that had conditions around the percentage of units that would be available to folks that were under 100% AMI. I'm just throwing out conditions. Is that something that we would have an opportunity to talk about at a later date? That's not a part of the zoning decision, correct?
I would say setting this application aside, that's definitely a conversation that staff would like to have with you that reflects some of the comments you heard earlier tonight from the other speaker about what are these intangibles. Those are some of the intangibles that we would like to bring forward to have that conversation that helps make projects more affordable. But again, that's a separate conversation than the application under consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Russ, this project is vested under the existing codes that we have in place at this point.
That is correct.
So those codes are applicable to this particular project at this time.
Yes.
So, okay.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Any other questions? Councilmember Shipman, anything up there? Okay. Okay, so I would open up the floor then for discussion amongst council members. And then your next step would be an action.
Well, for the purpose of discussion, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance. What is that, 1811?
1181.
1181.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I would open the floor to discussion on the motion.
Okay, so I'll go with that. You mean like right here? Can anybody hear me? Good. I'm looking at an aerial view of this area right now on Google Maps, and I'm having a hard time seeing a bunch of townhomes on that particular piece of property with all these single family homes around it. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not really sure. Could you tell me what is the outlet of this? Where are they going? Are they going out on 115th to get down
Yeah.
to?
So there would be two public road connections, one to through 15th Street and then the other down 108th where we're in that new neighborhood that is already being developed. Down to 18th, yeah, eventually down to.
Okay.
So
Didn't you
there's
have
one
a-
that goes west and one that goes south, essentially.
Didn't you have an aerial of that earlier?
I do. I can bring that up. It's coming. Hold on.
Too related to.
So
Any other discussion? Oh, she bringing that up.
I guess while that's coming up, I'll ask as part of our discussion. I'm skimming through here. Have we received any comment or feedback in favor of this? Other than the application itself? I mean, I'll be honest, I'm looking at the record here and it seems like there's a lot against it. I just want to make sure.
Well, again, it isn't a popularity contest. The issue is whether the criteria for rezone has been met. And if you look at pages 4 and 5 and 6 of the hearing examiner's report, he goes through each of the criteria. And if you think it's been approved, he makes an explanation why. If you think that one of these criteria has not been met based on the information you have in the record, that could be a basis for.
That's what we're supposed to be asking. is if one of those
disapprove, yeah.
criteria have not been met.
Right, you have to look at it and if you're gonna say no, I don't think we should approve this, you're going to need to say that's because the criteria number 5 here or number 6, LM cite the code has not been met because of, and then give the information that you think supports that conclusion. So that's kind of the box that you folks are in terms of making your decision.
Then as counsel, I'd have to ask you for the legal definition of materially detrimental to uses or property in the immediate vicinity.
Well, I don't know that there's a statutory definition for that, but material means it has to be substantial.
Okay.
More than minor.
Okay.
But yes.
Councilmember Shipman has her hand up.
Good.
I just had a question in regards to the traffic study. That seems like a lot of homes going in to only have a minimal impact. And listening to citizens' comments, that's one of their concerns. And when I think of a neighborhood of single family homes, that would be, almost 100 of them. Is it the same impact that's being taken into consideration for townhomes? Because I'm just kind of questioning that.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So for the traffic impact analysis, it's based on PM peak hour. And so what the analysis for the rezone is doing is looking at the number of PM peak hour trips under R6 versus R8 to 12. That difference is essentially 10 trips when you're changing the rezone from R6 to R8 to 12. just for PM peak hour trips. That doesn't include the total number of in and out trips. That is in the traffic impact analysis. I don't have that number here, but it's attached in the staff report to the hearing examiner. So when I'm saying 10 trips, it's really the difference between changing the zones would increase by 10 total PM peak hour trips, if that helps.
So the way it was the prior zoning, how many homes would be on that same piece of property?
Yeah.
We're kind of comparing there.
Sure. Under R6, it is 58 units. And under R8 to 12, the max is 116. Essentially, you're essentially doubling the number of units that would be allowed.
And we're saying only 10 additional trips? I'm just making sure I'm understanding.
So the caveat.
Trips a day or per hour? What is the 10 additional trips? What's the time frame in that?
So if I can offer a couple of clarifications with the underlying zoning, the base capacity that Planner Place just mentioned would be the 56 units, but then under recent changes to state law, that is doubled for the allowance of a duplex per single family lot. So you're back up to about the same capacity that you would see then for the rezone with the townhomes in a different style of development. The PM peak hour is your standard rush hour, and that's measured between 4 PM and approximately 6 to 7 PM. And your first question was, is there a different measure? It's measured at the same time frame, but there is a manual called the Traffic Engineers Manual to determine trip generation. And there is a lower trip generation rate associated with a townhome than there would be with a single family home. So that number does decrease as part of the math that you wouldn't necessarily be privy to, but there is a calculation and a reduction factor from one type of housing to another. Hey, Melissa. I'm sorry, Kim, go ahead.
I just said thank you.
Okay. Melissa, as part of the traffic study, is there any parking study done as part of that study?
No, there was no parking study. For the parking for this, it would, there would be parking in the driveway and then also in the garage for the townhomes. And then there are off-street parking spaces that are devoted as part of the preliminary plat in a large tract, essentially, if you will.
Okay, but that's separate from the rezone. That's
Right,
part of the
yeah,
subdivision.
I agree.
So I just want to make sure everyone is on the same page. Assuming this rezone is approved, what opportunities would the public have to weigh in the future before any building commences on the property, if any?
Yeah, so there will be no more future public opportunities. There was when the notice of application occurred, and then there was with the SEPA DNS, and then when we did the open record public hearing, and then tonight. So there's been essentially four public comment opportunities. And then at this point, if it does get approved, it would move to construction plan review when the applicant actually submits for that.
Thank you.
I think our city attorney had more.
Right, you have an approved preliminary plat, right? So that process, basically final plat approval, remember, it's just basically has the developer done everything that's been required in the preliminary plat approval. So we've kind of moved on in this particular project. So as long as the property's been appropriately zoned for that plat approval, basically the time for input on what can occur there or how that project will develop is over. It'll be more a matter of have they done what they're required to do by the conditions of preliminary plat approval.
So Greg, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So if I were to vote against this, I would need to cite specifically a criteria that I believe was not met.
Right, one or more of the criteria and the reason for that, yeah. The facts upon which that is.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will, we're gonna, we'll go ahead and call for a vote then. So the motion on the floor is to pass, where'd the thing go? Ordinance 1181. And it's been seconded. So all those in favor
Aye.
Aye.
and any opposed? Kim, where were you at?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, motion passes. Okay, with that, there's no action items and we go to an executive session. There's going to be, the executive session is a discussion of potential litigation as well as property acquisition.
As well as collective bargaining.
As well as
So
collective bargaining, but we do
I'm-
not have any action to follow.
no action to follow. I'm looking at a total of 30 minutes to start. You will need to make a motion per your procedures to extend the meeting past 8 o'clock.
Okay, you want to go 30 minutes, I've said?
Staff is asking for 30 minutes total for the 3 topics.
Okay, so we're gonna go 30 minutes. So what we do for executive session is you ask if you're not pertinent to the discussion to exit, and there's no action to follow, which means there's no real reason to come back, go home, get some dinner and
So-
enjoy your family.
Can I get a motion?
I
from
move
the
that
council
we-
to extend till 8:30?
I move that we extend our council meeting this evening until 8:30 PM.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
And why don't we start that executive session in 3 minutes?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay,
You're not in favor of the motion?
not in favor of extending the meeting.
You don't want to,
Councilmember Shipman, are you in favor of the motion to extend to 8:30?
What's the purpose of having a meeting till 8 o'clock if we always go over?
but we gave you like,
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't here last week.
I gotta come back to this. I gotta come back to this. meeting.
Well, no, we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I've remembered to mention you guys.
Second. Okay. Oh, you just mute. Okay, the council has requested an additional 5 minutes. It's 8:31, so we'll go to 8:36. I need a motion from the council to extend for 5 minutes. I need a motion. Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, it is 8:36 and we're back.
All right, we are back and there's no action to follow on this executive session, so can I get a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Who seconded that?
I did.
Right, okay, thank you.
Aye.
All right, have a good evening.
Thank you.